From the Corner Office is brought to you by Synovus Bank, championing business growth through trusted, relationship-driven banking throughout the Gulf Coast region. Toni Ronayne rose to the top of her field as president of Perkins Restaurants. Then Toni took her career on something of a counterintuitive turn, starting her own fractional CEO business, the C Society. The Business Observer writes about counterintuitive leaders like Toni often, people who like to zig when others zag. To read those stories and more every day online and every week in print, subscribe to the Business Observer. Go to businessobserverfl.com to sign up. Hello and welcome to the Business Observer's From the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Toni Ronayne, founder of the C Society. Toni, thanks for being here and welcome.
I'm so excited to be here, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Well, we're going to talk about the C Society. We're going to talk about your restaurant leadership and executive career, Perkins, Freshie, and some other brands, Starbucks as well. Some really cool, obviously known brands. And we're going to get into kind of how you've grown as a leader. Before we do that, Toni, let's get our audience to know you a little bit better with some series of rapid fire first ever questions. So what was your first job?
First job, I was a coat check girl at a Greek banquet hall in the south side of Chicago.
A coat
I was 12.
Girl. Wow, you were 12. That sounds a little child labory. I don't know.
You could get away with it in the 90s. You certainly couldn't now.
And I think it's kind of obvious, but what is a coat check girl? What were your job responsibilities?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a big job. So people would come in, they'd bring us their coats, we would hang them up and give them a ticket. So definitely, needed to be accurate and make sure that people, we were hanging the coats in the right place. And it was all based on tips. So we weren't paid hourly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the night, when everyone got their coats, we'd get tipped. And, I think I was probably the youngest out of the group, but there were usually about one or two other people that I was working with. And we would divide up the tips and we would go home.
Yeah, that's interesting because then if you think about your hospitality career, you probably dealt with a lot of the changes in sort of the tip culture and, how tips get split and how tips are sort of designed. And there was that trend for a little bit where some restaurateurs were like, we're not going to do tipping at all. We're just going to raise the hourly wage. So you probably saw all of that in your career.
Yeah. I mean, and now when you go into third-party delivery, you're automatically prompted to tip somebody 18, 20, 25%. So the game has definitely changed.
It's totally changed. Okay. What was outside of college, but what was not including college, what was the first time you lived on your own? Where was that? What was that experience like?
First time I lived on my own. So I was actually working as a counter manager for Estee Lauder, and I got my own apartment. So again, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. So that's where I was. Now, I only lived in that apartment for about 90 days. And then I was offered an opportunity to move to California. And on a whim, I took that opportunity, got on a plane within 24 hours and found myself in a completely new place. So yeah, it was short-lived. And then I moved into my own apartment in California, which is where I spent the next 4 years of my life.
Did you have like friends, family? Was that just totally on your own? Did you know other people there? That's such a great life adventure and risk.
It was a big risk. I mean, at my age now, I probably wouldn't do the same thing. But no, I had 3 jobs at the time, and one of them was working at a 50,000 square foot entertainment complex, and I was the promoter there. And so this company had come through and they hosted this big event, and then afterwards they said, hey, why don't you come work with us? So I started working with them very, very part-time, and they called me and offered me a full-time job and an opportunity to go to Newport Beach. And I was young, and I thought I can't say no to that opportunity. So quite literally within about 24 hours, I was on a plane and starting my new life.
Yeah, come live on the beach in California and you're in Chicago. Amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was wintertime. I mean, it was a no-brainer. And they were great, and they essentially said, "Come out here, spend 90 days. If you wanna go home, you can go home." And so it wasn't like I was giving up everything in that moment, but it was an opportunity to try something new, and, I haven't told that story in a really long time, and given my transitional life this year, I guess I'm not afraid of taking risks.
Yeah, but it's just who we were talking right before this podcast started, you and I, Tony, because we have teenagers, and you wonder how we react when our kids come to us and say they want to make a decision like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a helicopter parent when it comes to my kids, and I think that the world is so much different now. I mean, we're talking about 23 years ago. It was a different world. So the idea of my daughter coming to me and just saying, "Hey, I'm flying the coop and I'm out," it's terrifying.
100%. Our son is going to be going to college soon. Aaron, he comes up occasionally on this podcast, and he's a playwright, and I think he wants to go to New York City someday. And his parents are kind of avoiding that conversation. So we will see how it goes.
I get it. I
Yes.
get it.
Yeah. Okay. What, Tony, was your first concert? Or who was your first concert?
Alanis Morissette.
Alanis Morissette. Love it.
Yeah, yeah, and she still is amazing as ever. So, talk about a legend and somebody whose music has transcended decades. And now, I've got a almost 15-year-old in the house, and she listens to all of the music I listened to 20 years ago because it's so cool.
That's cool. They go
And
back. Yes.
they do.
My
Yeah.
Lauren actually told us about my wife and I, about an Alanis Morissette documentary that we watched recently. So very cool.
Oh, I'll have to
Yes.
check that out.
It's very good. It's very good. Okay. All right. So we got the fun. I mean, the rest is going to be fun too, but that's a little bit of fun first. So, Tony, start with C Society. What is C Society and what is your role in it?
So the Sea Society is a collective of fractional leaders. We work primarily in the hospitality and restaurant industries. And what I focus on is matching exceptional, proven executive level leadership, and matching them to emerging companies that are looking for leadership but might not be able to afford the overhead of a full-time hire. So that's like in the functional sense what we do at the Sea Society. We have leaders across every faction. So we have chief executive officers, chief operating officers. We cover finance, culinary, marketing, digital, chief commercial officers, you name it. We also have an executive coaching arm of our business. So really kind of an a la carte offering for any founder, business, whether that's a small emerging brand or we're working with some of the larger components. And you could think of us almost like consultants, but more in the trenches. So we don't just come in and identify problems. We actually come in and work with these brands and these leaders to help to improve their business and their operations. Um, and then the other component of this was really about and born from this idea that as I sat back and was observing what was happening in our industry, I kept seeing these incredible leaders finding themselves in a position where they weren't really sure what they wanted to do next. There's been a large amount of leaders that are starting to leave corporate positions and move into fractional. And so the trend certainly has existed in other industries. But as I sat back and observed what was happening in the restaurant industry, I recognized that there were some really smart, talented executives out there, but everybody was out there trying to do it themselves. So, having to market your services, having to build those connections, having to go out and find a way to kind of move your business forward. And I spent time meeting with these executives and talking to them. And one of the things that they said to me was, number one, I hate to go out and have to find my own business. And number two, I'm used to being on a team. And so this is some pretty lonely work. And that's really where this idea was born. We're a collective. So we support each other. We have this great community where we're sharing knowledge, where we're sharing insights. We get together on a monthly basis. We've got our text threads and whatnot, but really it's a collective, and the belief system around that is that great brands and great leaders don't grow on their own. That certainly, that happens, that magic happens within a community. And so that's why I wanted to found the company and how we've built it.
Yeah, and one of the things from reading about the Sea Society that sort of makes you guys stand out is you guys are coming with you said in the trenches. I love that phrase because you guys have this real experience. Tell us
That's
about, you've done a couple of different things in your career. Maybe to start with, toward the most recent part, Perkins. Tell us about your role at Perkins and what you did there.
Yeah, so I was hired in 2024 to be the brand president at Perkins, and previous to that, I spent most of my career in operations and franchise development. Before I moved over to Perkins, I was the managing director at Little Caesars in Canada, and I was tasked with the opportunity to lead a rebrand of a 65-year-old beloved legacy brand. I don't know if you're familiar with Perkins. We They do have locations in Florida, and so coming into that, it was an opportunity really to think about how do we evolve this brand in a way that still speaks to the core customer that's coming to them for 65 years, but also think about, this incredible platform that existed of this legacy, and how do we build on that and innovate on that. So we launched a new restaurant concept. We rebranded. We went from Perkins Restaurant and Bakery to Perkins American Food Company, really speaking to the roots of this company. We launched a fast casual concept, so thinking about other ways to be able to make Perkins accessible across the world, and it was just a fantastic experience. I'm the type of leader that runs towards the fire, and the idea of being able to take on a brand like that was something that really spoke to me. I was very connected to that brand, and I'm proud of the work that we were able to do there. So, you take a role like that, and then afterwards you start to think, well, what do I do next? I'm not just an operator. I'm not just a franchise development executive. I'm not just a brand president. I've kind of done all of the things. And one thing was evident for me as I thought about my next role, which was I want to be in a place where I'm able to really help to accelerate and grow brands that connect with consumers, and do it in a way that feels like it speaks to my value set.
Yeah. You talk about run to the fire and get in there and do it. I love that phrase. And around this, it was actually after the Perkins brand transition, but there was another restaurant company that had a transition, Cracker Barrel. You might have heard of it. It didn't go as well. And we're not gonna talk about the Cracker Barrel situation, but it does bring up a good question for you. How did you handle kind of the stress and pressure of you're changing the 65-year-old brand and people might react to it in different ways. So how do you approach a big project like that?
Yeah. Well, and I was obviously very close to the Cracker Barrel story, and had the opportunity to actually speak publicly about that, and how that was received. I would say that anytime that you're looking at revitalizing a legacy brand, that's always the fear. Is are you going to isolate that core guest? And so as we built our strategic plan, I was very cognizant of rooting our strategy not in my own bias or in anybody's bias at the table, but working through the data, meeting with our guests, understanding what our customers had to say about us, making sure that we were able to be true to our voice. And we did have a couple of iterations actually of this brand. As I had walked into the business, there was some work that had already been done, and I kind of pushed the envelope a little bit further. um, and we had great partners. We had a great agency that we worked with. We had obviously great leaders at the table. And one thing about a brand like Perkins is that the people that work in the business, they've stayed a very long time. So, there were franchisees that had been there for 45, 50 years, guests. And so being able to tap into that knowledge and that network of people that really grew up with the brand, and make sure that whatever changes that we made were going to be well received is the goal. Um, so, I mean, my heart broke for the Cracker Barrel team. Julie, the CEO, is an incredibly smart, strategic woman. They did some fantastic things with the brand. I think it's easy. You get these kind of these people on the internet that don't really understand what goes into making these types of decisions, and everybody has an opinion. But I was very happy with how our rebrand was received, and I think a lot of that was due to the work that we did, really assessing and evaluating the data, making sure that we were clear on who our guest was and who the guest was we were trying to reach, and then keeping everything back to our value set around, let's make sure that when we show up in the marketplace that we still feel like Perkins, and that the decisions that we make to modernize don't feel so out of left field and don't feel like we're trying to be somebody that we're not. So when we launched our new restaurant of the future in Orlando, I actually invited two of our guests from Minnesota, who are two of our very best guests, and they go to Perkins every single day. They have for the last 30 years. They're twin brothers, and we personally invited them to that opening so that they could be a part of stewarding in this new legacy, and also to get their feedback on this test store. And so I think you always have to be checking in with your guests and
Yeah.
and and validating the
Yeah.
decisions that you make.
Yeah, what a cool story that was. So talking about leadership in general, Tony, who have been some of your leadership mentors and sort of people who've influenced your leadership style and career?
I've been really fortunate to have great leadership almost entirely across my career, at every company I've ever worked for. So I would say that, people that have definitely supported and influenced me, Matthew Korn is somebody I think about, who's the founder of Freshie. When I joined that company, I joined as the VP of operations, and he definitely saw that I had the opportunity to stretch and do different things. And so as I worked in that organization, I was able to then lead the international business, which is something I had never done before. I was able to be the global head of franchising, again, which was something I hadn't done before. And so I would say this idea of kind of innovating on yourself, trying new things, innovating on a business has been, I definitely attribute part of that journey to that relationship that I had with Matt. And I think some of the best leaders are people that challenge your status quo, and we have a very different style. And so sitting at the table with him over the course of those years, there were definitely moments where we might not have agreed, and there were times where I would sit back and I'd go, "You know what? You were right about that." And it challenged me to work through my bias. So that's probably one of the great leaders that I think about in my journey. Some of the other people I think about, honestly, especially relevant this year, are women that are just in my network, that are peers. And I spent a lot of time as I was kind of climbing the ladder, so to speak, in my career, and it felt very lonely, and it was hard, especially as a woman, to kind of navigate this industry, which is very male dominated. I was often the only female at the table, and in the last couple of years, I've really fallen into this place where I have this network of smart, brilliant women, that are working in different capacities in the industry. My best friend, Harriet Schumacher, she is a master certified executive coach. I met her early on in my career. She's somebody I definitely learn from and look up to. And again, like somebody who makes sure I'm not sitting in my own echo chamber as I'm considering, life decisions or career decisions. So I consider myself incredibly blessed that I've been surrounded by such great leaders, and I have a real desire to learn, which I think is important for anybody that wants to grow. Is making sure that you've got this openness to challenge your bias and find people to surround yourself with that can help you to grow and learn.
Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot on this podcast. Good leadership tip is to be curious, even if you're the C, or not even if, when you're the CEO or C level, still be curious about what is happening in front of you.
I completely agree with that, and I think that there's this perception that, as people advance to this level or, are sitting in the C-suite, that they don't have the same insecurities or that they don't have the same challenges. Imposter phenomenon is something that's widely studied, and it's not just with women, it's with male CEOs. And so one of the things that we offer at the C Society is actually the opportunity for founders or CEOs to have their own personal board of mentors and leaders. And that's something that I think is so necessary because it can become very lonely at the top. And it's quite easy when you're driving a business to get into your own head. And so being able to work externally and get that feedback and those opinions is so critical. Um, and asking for help is something I think um, that extends in every role of kind of every organization, including the people at the top. So, yeah, I like to be able to just share that in a means to kind of, I guess, give a peek behind the curtain and reiterate that that it doesn't matter where you're working within an organization. I think that we all are human beings and we come to work with the same challenges and insecurities.
Yes. Yeah. Really good point. You mentioned feedback. What's a thing of feedback or sort of feedback that you received in your career that maybe was tough to digest and marinate at the time, but looking back has been very valuable to you in getting to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, feedback is interesting. I mean, I always say that feedback is a gift, and I believe it truly is. I also think it's important to consider the source. And so, as a driven kind of passionate female executive, I've definitely been challenged about maybe some of the way that I've packaged my messages. Um, I'm the type of leader that isn't afraid to challenge. I've been said that I bump into the furniture a little bit. And I'm an innovator. I'm an innovative type of personality. So when I identify problems, I call them out, and that makes people feel very uncomfortable. Um, and so, I've received feedback about that in my career. And what I would say though is that in hindsight, that definitely made me quiet my voice. And I would say that there's an element of conditioning that strong female executives experience as they're going through their careers, um, because it sometimes we can make people feel uncomfortable, which isn't the intent. But in order to kind of be at the table and play, sometimes that means that we might come off a little bit more direct or a little bit more honest, and then there's a bit of a reputation that you can build for being difficult to work with. And the reality is, and kind of where I live in the space today, is that it's not necessarily um, about quieting your voice or changing, the brilliance that you bring to the table. I think it's really about finding the place where you belong, and if you don't find it, building that. Um, so, it was something I was very mindful of, and I think over time, what I found was that I was having very successful relationships with my direct reports. I was having very successful relationships with my peers, but sometimes, managing me, frankly, might have been challenging for some. And I think, now I sit back and I'm like, well, yeah, I probably was a little bit difficult to manage because I was pushing. I was pushing the organization. I had higher expectations. I was challenging my team and I was bringing them along with me. But there's, back to the feelings of insecurity and discomfort. They exist everywhere in an organization, and sometimes, that's the relationship that you might have with somebody you report to. And so you've got to consider the source. And I think that don't allow feedback to only happen in a vacuum. Like when you get difficult feedback, identify who else can you talk to about that to either validate that point of view, or to challenge it. And I think that's also equally important.
Yeah. I bet it's helped you. It sounds like it has helped you mentor other leaders or work with other leaders you mentioned on your team and push them to be better. But in terms of thinking about it, to present that feedback in a way that doesn't quiet their voice, that doesn't stifle that
Mhm.
innovation, I would think. I mean, I should ask you, did that help you as a leader as you grew in your career?
I think it definitely did. And you know, um, for me personally, I'm the type of leader that I wear my heart on my sleeve. I mean, I wake up every day and, I am connected to the organization I'm working with. Like I'll often say when I worked at Starbucks, I was bleeding green. When I was at Little Caesars, I wore the orange suit. I mean, it's like so when you care so deeply, sometimes it's difficult to hear feedback that makes you question if you're doing the right things. And so as I mentor others, there's also this component around just because it feels personal, maybe it's not personal. And how can you look at that feedback and what can you take out of it that is going to help you to apply and move forward? And what are the things that you're going to take out of that conversation that you're just going to set to the side and let go? Um, and as I get older, and as I am now a mother of 3 kids, you learn that you need to let go of things all the time. Like your expectations are very, very different than the reality. And we're moving so quickly that, there's it's almost the expression of like, don't sweat the small stuff. Like, don't let these comments or things drag you down. Take what you can and apply it as a learner, and then leave behind the things that maybe don't make you feel good. Because every conversation that you have or every role that you take, you're in a completely different place. Like in your life, you're in a completely different journey in your leadership. Um, but I do see that with women that I coach, this idea of kind of you carry those scars with you as you go through this journey. And I spoke with a friend recently. She's working for a new company, and she feels completely seen for all of the brilliance that she has. um, but it took her kind of starting in this new company to realize that maybe she just wasn't in the right place the last time. And sometimes that's actually what's going on. It's not just about what we carry or what we do. It's about you're not at the right table, or you're not working with the right culture, it's not the right people. And for women especially, we've tried really hard to make things work.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's at a default. So I think being able to be objective and look outside is important.
Yeah, excellent. That's really good advice. Toni, as we are winding down on the podcast here, what are we looking forward to? What are you most looking forward to for 2026 with the C Society? What's new and exciting and top of mind for you?
Well, so we just launched a couple of weeks ago. So obviously looking forward to this year. Would love to be able to be sitting here a year from now and celebrating the great success that we've had. We're working with a handful of fantastic brands that are all very different. We're working with a fast casual healthy concept. We have a Mexican brand that we're working with. We have a legacy company that we're working with. And for me, the ability to start helping to contribute to the executives on my team, their lives and their livelihood is really what gets me up every single day to do this work. So, we have conference season ahead of us, so we're going to be out there meeting with potential clients, connecting, and then we continue to add talent to our roster. So, my days spent having great conversations and getting to know people, and so continuing to build, I think the momentum that we're already experiencing is what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Toni Ronayne, founder of the C Society, thank you so much for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordon. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.